Hi, good evening, everyone. We'll be starting the session in some time. Meanwhile, I would just like to do mic testing for all our speakers. Professor C.D. Mitra, if you could just switch on your mic and video and just say hi. And hi, Preeti. Welcome.
Hi,
Hi,
can you
Preeti.
see and hear me?
Yes. Sumant, are you here?
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. Namaskar.
Namaskar ji.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, all of you. We'll wait just for one more minute before we start the session.
Pranchu, you're on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this sixth episode of the series Demystifying EPR, a key enabler for circular economy. And I would also like to wish you a very, very happy new year. This is the first webinar in this new calendar year. And as you are aware, we are running this webinar series since the start of 2022 financial year with the broad objective of looking at different perspectives towards circular economy and how do we untangle many issues, whether they are related to financing circular economy or it is related to the role of EPR in circular economy or issues related to how do we enable better recycling practices, how do we bring transparency and more accountability to the whole space of circular economy. So today we are going to talk on a very interesting topic, something that has not been covered till now, which is about consumer participation and consumer behavior. While we all believe that it is imperative for consumers to participate, but at a even not just in India, but even at a global level, consumer participation is yet to see very active results. And while we are seeing some traction, while we are seeing some level of consumer participation, but real action at a grassroots level is yet to be evidenced. And when I say real action, I'm essentially saying a more activist attitude from consumers where they are actively searching for, let's say, recycling solutions. They are actively looking for products which have higher amount of recycled content. That is yet to be seen. So while we are seeing early stages of solutions where or demands from consumers, but it is still very nascent. And the objective of today's discussion is to essentially identify how do we enable this, how do we ensure that consumers become active citizens and are actively asking and seeking for solutions related to circular economy, and they are maybe even rewarding brands, rewarding producers who are taking decent steps towards enabling their systems in the right direction. So with me today, I have a whole range of speakers and panel members. I am also, I would also like to share that Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee from Ministry of Electronics and IT will unfortunately not be able to join us today. He had some personal emergency due to which he had to cancel at the last minute. But I have another good news to share that we have Professor Mitra from IIM who is today with us. I had the fortunate experience of spending some time with him during my recent visit to IIM Calcutta. So he will be the keynote speaker with us, and we will do a dialogue with Professor Mitra as we go along before we get on to the panel discussion. So Professor Mitra, very welcome, and thank you for joining us and accepting the request almost at the last minute. But really fortunate to have you with us, someone who can throw light on the aspect of consumer behavior, on how do we move from something which is a thing of interest for a person to something which becomes a habit, because that is what we ought to achieve if we are to really move in the direction where people are actually very actively participating in the whole life cycle of a product, right from choosing the right type of product to using it in a wise way, ensuring it is disposed of in a manner that it is truly recycled. So a very warm welcome, and I'll open it up to you if you wish to say some opening remarks, and then we can do some round of discussions.
I think I'm visible. Am I audible too?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for inviting me. I know it's last minute, so I'm a little conscious of the fact that I'm coming in with a relatively less preparation, and I hope I don't. That's not going to be an issue. And I'm also kind of very thrilled to be in the company of so many experts, but a little odd also because be it circular economy, EPR, sustainability, I think we have far bigger, better names. But for what it's worth, since I'm a teacher and professor of marketing and also a student, I think I will try to look at things from that perspective. And I have some, I hope there will be, I have some interesting observations as to why, while there have been many other attempts that have been done to, push towards EPR and what companies can do, what governments can do, I think I would call it the missing piece, but I definitely an inadequately addressed piece has been the looking at consumer and consumer behavior. And I honestly think that is actually the trickiest part of the whole puzzle. And we probably need to think and brainstorm a lot because let me assure you, to the best of my knowledge and my limited understanding, there are no easy quick-fire solution. There's probably going to be a lot of deep thinking, some experiments which we have to do before we reach a point where we know and be and I have some thoughts and observations, because even globally, except maybe a few countries in Europe or whatever, I don't think this has really become a mass movement or the standard operating procedure for most consumers, right? It's perhaps more the exception than the rule, and that's a big challenge. So I have some thoughts, but Pranshu, I'm happy to let you lead the conversation, and I will keep
Sure.
adding. But
Sure.
let's keep it like a
Professor,
conversation, and we can chip in, we can butt each other,
sure,
butt into each other. I'm sure
sure.
that will be more interesting to have. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Professor Mitra, one of the key things that whenever we talk of moving to a circular economy, the biggest pushback that I get, whenever we are talking about it is nobody's asking, and who is going to pay for it? Is the consumer willing to pay for it? Is the consumer willing to participate? There is no demand. I mean, this is a very regular point. Whenever I'm in dialogue, especially with the leadership of very large companies, this is a very constant thing that I keep on hearing, that we don't see the demand yet.
Yeah.
And while there is dialogue, but no real active participation. So how do we bring in this active participation from individuals?
Okay, so I have 2 or 3 perspectives that I will share. Some of them are based on my learning research, and some of them are also my own personal point of view. So, any business can survive only when your customers buy your products, services, solutions, and pay for them, and willing to pay whatever you think is the right price. And like, it has to be a win-win. They have to see value in it. You have to make money out of it. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. I mean, from a business sustainability, I'm not talking of environment sustainability. That's a larger picture. We'll come to that. Now, one of the reasons that I think, I honestly think that some people who have jumped from the whole bandwagon of business as usual, which still is for a lot of companies how they are in terms of their product, their marketing, whatever, to suddenly expecting that the consumer to be ready to buy sustainable products, services, etc. And more so if there is an environmental premium that you expect them to pay, is honestly expecting a little too much, because of 2 reasons. One is, I think before we sell sustainable products or services, I think we have to do a good enough job, which honestly I don't think has been done yet, of selling the concept and the need for sustainability. And I'm not sure enough consumers have yet figured that out. And when I say figure that out, there are 2 levels, and this is where consumer behavior becomes very, very interesting. A lot of, and this is something that a lot of learnings are kind of converging broadly in the area of business, marketing, etc. But every aspect of human activity, we normally think that human beings are, rational choice and decision makers, and increasingly, fields like behavioral economics, cognitive psychology, cognitive neuroscience, evolution psychology, and all of them have relevance to sustainability, and I'll come to that in a minute, actually have proven that human beings are actually very irrational. Number one. Number two, they're habit driven. One of the reasons that people are not changing their behavior is because we, and I'm using the word we in a very general way, it's government, it's companies, it's the product that we've been selling for the last 20, 50, 100 years, we've spoiled them. And one fine day we expect them to suddenly change course. That's not going to happen. And we've not even sold them. We've not even given them a convincing enough argument why they should do it, what's the difference. Now, and often the argument is at a very head level. It's a very rational, number-driven, quantifiable, often with a lot of jargon which consumers either don't understand or don't care about. And the truth is, all human decisions are made from the heart, not from the head. And we haven't managed to make that an emotive issue. And that leads to the next point. When we ask people, I mean, by now, I think most people, unless you are, living under a stone, you probably know anybody, even a common person, knows that environment is an issue, climate change is an issue, all of that. But the point is, we hear about these things, but life carries on normal, right? As somebody famously said, we're more bothered about the daily weather fluctuation than the climate change that happens over 5-10 years, because, and this is where evolutionary biology and psychology comes in. The human species, ours, which is Homo sapiens, we're just only about 200, 250,000 years old. And, the brain's only developed in the last 50, 70,000 years. So the point is, and till 2 centuries back, the average lifespan of a human being was whatever, 30, 40 years, which means for us to foresee, imagine, and actually feel it emotionally, what's going to happen 20, 30, 50 years from now is not something. What bothers me is that what's the weather today? What's the weather tomorrow? But what will climate happen, change happen after 10 years is something that is not easy to imagine. It's just like, it's a funny statement to me. Most of us can't imagine our death because we haven't died yet. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's a little like that. It's difficult to imagine. You can give me the number and data and statistics and carbon dioxide levels and all of that, and I get it, I understand it, but it doesn't move me. It doesn't create any change in action and behavior. And one of the things that we learn in marketing is that it's relatively easy for you to convince people to switch from, let's say, one brand of, let's say, toothpaste to another, or one brand of soap to another. It's much more difficult to change behavior when you're actually asking them to change fundamental habits and behavior.
Yeah.
Again, the reason is that habits are hardwired. It's a little like, if I had to give an analogy, it's like, the brain forms, automatic patterns of behavior, which has been hardwired in behavior. So the moment there's a stimulus, we are used to responding because that's how we've done. We've done it for the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And suddenly, because you give some numbers and logic or calculation, conceptually I might understand, but emotionally I don't buy into it. And from a marketing or behavioral sciences point of view, this is often called the difference between implicit and explicit behavior. Explicit behavior is what I tell others. And there has been, in fact, I was reading this very interesting book some time back. It says, it's by a British psychologist, said, why aren't we changing the planet? And it basically says that we all get it, especially in the Western world, everybody gets it, that, environment is a big issue. But that stated belief versus actual behavior, there's a gap. Because we are creatures of habit, we are used to doing what we are doing. And often, and unfortunately that's the truth, be it environmental premium, be it that extra effort, there is that little bit more you have to do. First, you have to break and change a habit. That's not easy. Second is, unfortunately, in more cases than not, I have to either pay more money, or I have to travel a longer distance, or I have to make that extra effort. I have to figure something out. And honestly, I don't think we as in the government, the businesses, we haven't really made it easy enough. Firstly, we haven't convinced them enough at an emotive level. Secondly, we haven't made it easy enough. And the whole question is, why should I take this trouble of figuring it out and going a long distance, paying a higher amount of money? Chodo, dekha jayega, kabhi karenge, lekin wo kabhi kal karenge, kal never comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We keep doing the same thing that we've been doing for years and years and years. And that is one of the big problems happens. The other thing is that not only are we creatures of habit, we are also observers consciously and unconsciously of what we see others do. And if we don't see, and this is the tricky part, and this is where, environmentalism overall, but also specific behavior, be it, API, whatever. From a consumer perspective, unless I see and I know of enough other people who are close to me doing it, I'm not going to. So this is what's called the bandwagon effect, or what's called social proof. So if majority of the people are zigging, I intuitively feeling uncomfortable with zagging if there's a logic to it. So in effect, whenever social change needs to happen, you need to get that critical mass of people to convert. And that is when suddenly things start moving. And I think the big trick or the big problem is, how do you get that critical mass of people? And unfortunately, when it comes to environment, I think there are this small, I don't know what that percent is, 2%, 5% people who are already converted, who are shouting from rooftops, and the rest of the people don't care. And, and of course, there are the other, I don't want to call them Donald Trump kind, but who almost believe that this is all false narratives, right? So this is where it is. So there is one extreme set who don't believe, they think this all is bunkum, this all, environment, whatever. There are bigger problems, that they want to think about. There are another extreme, from our perspective, the right thinking people, but they are a small minority. And there's the middle majority who just out of habit continue doing what they're doing. And we haven't made their life easier. We haven't really convinced them, not just at a rational level, at an emotional level. And we haven't given them enough tools and mechanisms which would actually either incentivize financially or otherwise, or, trigger that change, and then give them a social proof that, see, so many other people are doing it. Small example, these days, and this is what, a little example, like, these days when we go and stay in a hotel, right? Earlier, if you remember, hotels used to say that, do you want to not give your, towel or bed sheets for washing, because then, you save so much of water, so much of detergent, so much of whatever, and all the rational number. And it didn't work too well. You know what worked? When they said 75% of the people who stayed in this room in the last 1 year did not, whatever. So the reason I'm doing it, not because of the rational reason, because others do it. So if it's the done thing and everybody else is doing it, so I must also do it, because that is how human behavior is. We work on herds. We work with, seeing large people doing it, and therefore that makes it socially acceptable or desirable. And those kind of things, the understanding the psychology of the consumer of what would trigger change, I think has not been adequately addressed. So there are a few other points, but I'm going to stop here and throw it back to you.
Yeah. So Professor Mitra, I mean, this brings me to a point of, of a huge challenge. If we look at the climate numbers, if we look at the science today, it's very clearly telling that we are almost at the tip of, the point of no return. And we need urgent action, and that there is really no time, that the time is really now to act. And while for building, the kind of consumption patterns that we have built, we have had, let's say, 5 decades, 7 decades of marketing and, spending going into it. To unravel all that and change, we have now maybe less than 10 years to drive that action. And this puts us into a very, very difficult spot, that how do we do it? And especially when, you don't have those kind of marketing budgets, you don't have that kind of, the whole push is not there. While for, increasing the consumption, there was a huge push, and there was a whole industry creation which happened for uncreating those patterns and really driving transformation of those patterns. We are really struggling. And just to build on the point, some of the things that have come out from our own research, from our own work at a grassroots level, there are 5 or 6 things that we are finding, people need if they have to traverse the journey. The first is ease. Undoubtedly, because right now, everything at my doorstep is the answer. So how do I bring in ease of participation? Let's say if I have to participate in recycling, then come pick it up right from my doorstep. I'm not even willing to go out and give it away. The second is, and an important one, which I really value, is trust. People do not really trust, because a lot of greenwashes happen, a lot of talk has happened, a lot of PR has happened, but there is absence on trust that even if I take my action, because there is no information loop closure. So people are not getting to know, you did this, and post this happened. And this is how, it leads to a closure. So that closure is not happening at a personal level. So this is a second issue that has come out, many times. Then in terms of reasons why people are participating, we found 3. First is emotional gratification. We are people who are driven. We understand the science, we have heard about it, and there is nothing to lose if we are to participate in action. Peer-to-peer recognition, like you said, there is societal pressure. We are seeing our friends, our groups, our participating. So there is now a pressure to participate. And then the third is, which is a fairly obvious, I get some money in return, which remains the biggest driver. But how do we unchange, all this, and how do we address this whole issue of urgency? We don't really have the luxury of time at this point in time. So what do we do? And if you recall, we did some exercise with your students, and it did give some very good results. But what do we do around this? Because this remains for me, the biggest topic, and wherever in various forums or various spaces, wherever we dialogue this is the place where it gets stuck.
Okay, so first, what you said about the urgency, and we probably have a very short window. We don't know, it's 5, 10, whatever years. Absolutely right. And the what shall I say? The metaphor, the analogy is about, you know about the story about the frog in the water which slowly boils, right? So we are exactly in that same situation. The water's heating up, the beaker's boiling. And one day when it starts boiling, it'll be too late. And by the time we realize that it's too late, there's nothing that can be done. Until then, we just every year 0.1 degree, 0.2 degrees centigrade, climate change, a little more forest, one Joshimat, one whatever. Theek hai yaar. We just read today's newspaper, tomorrow we forget and we carry on, right? So this is how we're getting used to it, because it's like very short. Now, what's the solution? Obviously, there's no easy answer. I'm going to say 3 things, and these are my personal hypothesis. And obviously, they are not easy, and maybe none of them will alone achieve everything that it should achieve, but maybe if you try to combine some of them, and again, as I said, sometimes it's about getting that critical mass. Is that turning point? Is that tipping point? So a lot of think about human behavior is about tipping point. And there's this interesting book called Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about what kind of people, right? So it to make social movement or something really spread widely in society, you don't necessarily always need the large number of people to start changing. They will, of course, eventually. But sometimes you need to get the right kind of people, and the right kind of people he classifies as salesmen and mavens or whatever. So those we have to take probably some of the principles. Now, I have two other interesting perspectives. I think that because it's about habit, I would probably take certain sets of people who are not yet become slaves of habit. And in my mind, there are two sets of people who are, to me, appearing to be low-hanging fruit. And there's a logic for it. The second set, in terms of priority, would be college students who will soon, when I'm saying soon, in the next 2-3 years, be stepping out and be working on their own and typically setting up on their own, right? Some of them will continue to stay with their parents, but they will have economic freedom. They will start making their own choices. Many of them will leave the city and go start living on their own. Now, this is a good time for them to inculcate the right set of habits. And how do you do that? And while they're in college, this is probably a very good captive audience to, do stuff in college. I mean, for example, can you get them excited about converting their college into a green campus? Can they get actively involved? And some of those initial, not just the concept, but the behavior have already been triggered while they're in college, so that when they step out into the real world, set up their own homes, whatever, alone, getting married, whatever, hopefully that will continue. That's one. But in terms of priority, the set that I would first target, who have the most at stake because they're going to live the longest, are school children. And this is for two reasons. They're the least corrupted in terms of habits and behavior. They're the ones who react most emotionally to any issue and situation. They're the people who care about plants, animals, birds, because they're very simple. They're simple-hearted, very emotive people, and that's how they are. And that's where appealing to the emotion of a child is a great thing to make them work. And sometimes. And the most interesting thing is that you can use these school children to actually trigger behavior change among parents. Because when a school child comes back from home and tells the parent, saying, Papa, Mama, आप ये क्यों कर रहे हो? ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए, ये गलत है. I mean, we all want to be role models to our children. And when we get shamed by our own children, saying, oh my God, I mean, if somebody else comes and tells me, we'll push them away saying, shut up, who are you to tell me? But my own children, I want to be a hero. I want to be, the role model. And when the child comes back and tells me, listen, this is not okay. I've learned and this is what you should do. Then I want to stand up and be the hero that my child wants me to be. And maybe that's a great way to go. And again, they're captive audience. You can do a lot of stuff, not just theory, but experiential learning, convert, you can have workshops, you can, do a lot of experiential learning where they, the behavior change can get triggered in school, green campus, all of that. And then they carry that behavior back into their homes. And they push their own parent to saying that this is what I've learned, this is what I'm doing. Now I'm going to continue doing the same thing at home. And I want you, my parents, to also be part of that. And parents will want to then, live up to the expectation of the child. So that's one. The other interesting thing, I think, is the power of social media. And a lot of social movements have often been triggered by social media. However, the problem with social media is usually has a short shelf life. If you remember ALS, whatever. So sometimes, it gets critical mass very fast. Something starts trending and and that is where using social media influencers. And this is where I think getting the right-minded, right kind of people without spending too much of money, because social media creates content every day. When you have to create ads, whatever, it takes a lot of time and effort. Social media can, a lot of user-generated content can get, it can get created and viral, but you have to find those. I mean, this is going back to the whole principle of what is called the law of few from, tipping point. If you find the right people who are maven salespeople, etc., if they start using the word and spreading the word, and they are the role model that, there's so much of, imitative behavior which happens, people doing everything on Instagram and TikTok or whatever, but can we use those tools? Again, they appeal a lot to young people to trigger some of these behaviors and create these interesting events. Like remember that ice bucket challenge? It happened and suddenly everybody was doing it, whatever. So we have to create those multiple occasions in multiple times a year, which would hopefully trigger, all kinds of behavioral change. And then, there's also this whole, need to share, need to show off, need to whatever it takes. I mean, let's be shameless about the fact that we have to do whatever it takes to trigger those kind of behavioral changes, right? So I think that is another interesting and important thing. It can't be unfortunately, a lot of what we do is very top down, set down rules, discipline, whatever. And there's a natural human tendency, especially if you go against the grain of my old habits, to resist. वो हम बोलते हैं लेकिन हम चोरी चोरी वापस वही करते हैं जो कितने साल कर चुके हैं, that kind of thing. Versus it has to be something that comes from within, and that has to be triggered by I need to live up to my child's expectations. I'm doing what others are doing. The people I follow or, look up to on social media have already started doing it. And I want to do the same thing and then share it. So we have to use some of these modern tools to be able to, in relatively less time, cost, effort, be able to create, because one of the fastest things that spreads is when people spread your word. I mean, it'll take a lot more time and effort if a few of us are generally going to shout from the rooftops, and after a while people will shut us out. But when people start spreading it among their own friends, neighbors, families, that is when it starts becoming a much more widespread movement. Not easy, but we have to find those little triggers, some interesting. Like I'm giving the ice bucket challenge as an example, something that suddenly makes it, seemingly interesting, exciting, that everybody wants to do. And then those kind of things we have to find. We have to, this is where we have to be a little more of smart marketers. And as I said, it's not only about marketing sustainable products or services or practices, but it's about the idea of sustainability and then give them tools and options to do. And I think to begin with, rather than asking them to do too many things, because people will get overwhelmed, take a few low-hanging fruit where there is, where the input to output ratio is the highest, right? Like, and something that people can see. I mean, something can be done which immediately has an impact on, let's say, pollution, or immediately has an impact on something. Then people would see, there would be a feedback loop within a year or two saying, "Arey, ab काफी लोग ये कर रहे हैं और देखो एक साल में इसका ये असर हुआ, तो चलो और भी लोग करते हैं." And then you pick up. So you pick up one thing, but you, as you said, you have to make a proof of concept or use case. And today, the point you made about trust, हम करेंगे भी तो सच में होगा क्या? Greenwashing करते हैं, क्या करते हैं, क्या मालूम? Versus you show them proof of concept, and that is when more behavior will probably follow. So these are some early thoughts, but I don't know. I'm sure there are going to be many more, and we honestly need to brainstorm, collaborate. This is where we are. This is my thought. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Mitra. So, one more point which I'd like to bring up here is, one thing is, we need turning point on the audience side. Enough number of people need to display, but I think we also need a turning point or a tipping point on how many people are willing to make the noise about this. And today, I think we haven't even reached that tipping point. We have very few, dialogues. We have, so is it part of mainstream marketing today? The answer is no. I mean, it's a sidelined activity. Some brands, and I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule. There are some organizations who are wanting to take, an extra, do an extra march. They are in all walks of life, whether it is from a civil society organization to a consumer organization to a brand to a, so, but it has not yet become the norm. So even from a noise making perspective, or even from, who's going to initiate this dialogue or who's going to really reach out to this, so I see tipping points also in the people who have to make that noise. Today we are not even yet, we haven't, I think, reached that limit that there is enough noise, because very few of us yet hear. And in the next panel, actually, we will talk a lot about, how do we ensure that enough people are actually making noise and, they are reaching out to their own audiences. But before I close this first session, a heartfelt gratitude to you for coming, at the last minute, giving a very, very passionate talk. If you wish to, bring in some more points, we have a few more minutes before we go to the.
No, I think you're going to run out of time, and I'm very keen. Now I'm the amateur. The real experts are waiting, so I think we should wait to hear from them, and I'm keen to hear too. Right? So I'm good, and of course, I'm sure this is a conversation that will go on, and we'll all participate. So let the experts, real experts, come on board. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Mitra. So with this, we can now move to the next session. Before I move to the next session, let me, I forgot to share a couple of things. We are really thankful for this whole webinar series. I mean, this is the 6th episode, and we have 2 more episodes to come this year. This has been possible because of certain partnerships. So we have WEEE Forum and GIZ as a partner to this knowledge series, and there are sponsors Dell, HP Enterprise, and Apple. Due to which we are able to make this happen. So with this, Shripriya, I would like to hand over you the second round, and please initiate the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pranju, and thank you so much, Professor C.D. Mitra. It was fantastic. I think you all just laid the ground really well. And I see our marketing team and strategy team smiling here because you've definitely given them some ideas to take it forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to now mute firstly, hi and bye to everyone. I'll mute my audio video. I'll stay as long as I can, but lovely to be here. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we move on to the panel, and I would like to invite our panelist 1, Ms. Preeti Mahesh, Chief Program Coordinator, Toxics Link. Then we have panelist 2, Mr. Suman Shekhar, Founder and CEO, Lakshya Foundation. Panelist 3, we have Ms. K. Nalini, Joint Chief Environment Engineer, Tamil Nadu State Pollution Control Board. And panelist 4, we have Professor Dr. Adarsh Pal Vik, Chairman, Punjab State Pollution Control Board. So welcome all of you. And I would just request all the panelists to kindly turn. So we have everyone else on camera. Ms. Nalini, if you could just turn on your camera. Okay. So let's, thank you. So let's move on. So the first question is to you, Professor Dr. Adarsh Pal Vik. So we want to understand how do you ensure that there is a level playing field in creating an awareness? We got some perspectives and different viewpoints of how to approach consumer behavior, right? And since from the State Pollution Control Board perspective, you see so many players who are active. Some are active, some may not be, some are dormant. But how have you seen it? Like how many organizations actively participate, and what is their trend like? And how do you ensure that they are able to collaborate with state pollution control boards better to amplify the impact of the awareness? Over to you, sir.
Thank you everyone. Thank you the organizers. I am audible?
Yes, sir.
So giving me this particular chance. So I think as everybody has listened to the earlier speakers, so I think why we are holding this seminar, because nobody is ready to listen. So that's why you are making an impact. So as you asked, similar is the case with the, you can say, the big houses, the industrialists, rather individuals. Because everything linked with the behavior change, which you are expecting from each and one. So this is the technical issue, but still, because the law is there, the rules are there, they have been framed in the new perspective. So naturally, it is a kind of interface which so many years back they have forgotten to do this kind of activities. So now they are coming slowly. But ultimately, when the all stakeholders, all the ministries, all the governments, central as well as state, and all the regulatory kind of things like pollution board, local government, and police department. So when they will be coming into a kind of more active role, so I think then it will be on a positive side of that kind. Before that, we still can do a kind of awareness, a kind of behavior change, a kind of, you can say, to give them a kind of knowledge or to pursue them. Persuasion is going on, so like this. So I think this is the present answer to this your question. But let me, if it is allowed that 1 or 2 minutes, I just want to say why we are now using EPR or circular economy. So I always link the whole issue with our tradition. What was our tradition? The tradition was use, reuse, recycle, repair, everything, and it was in each and every individual houses. This was our culture maybe before our birth or like 40 or 50 years back. And there is no word waste in any natural principle. It is the humans who have designed the nature, and especially in our culture, the Indian culture, it was purely emphasizing on reduce, reuse, and it's very simple that the younger brother's books, his clothes, his shoes, his pen, his copies, books, everything in the individual houses was reused, recycled. This was our culture. But wrongly, we have entered into a culture known as use and throw culture. The culture of kind of, you can say, this disposable kind of culture. That so this is not the right way. So rather, we have forgotten our culture. So now we are using responsibility, refurbishment. So I think it is more important to understand our culture. And I feel there were no waste bins in any houses. The segregation is not the principle. The no generation of waste is the principle. So, but we have made the laws that segregation, transportation, then sanitary landfill, and now they have made a kind of mountains, and now we are circular economy and getting it back. So I think this particular issue, I just want to highlight that we must go back to our roots, to go back to our culture of now it is only the these kind of slogans in the schools, colleges, reuse this, but it was there in every each and every house. It may be the poor one. It was not that the issue of money. Even the person who were having money, they were a kind of that this thing should be repaired. This should be everlasting. So I think this is the main crux. So instead of doing this thing, we should stick to our culture. So this kind of thought process I just want to share. So please carry on.
Thank you, sir, for sharing that viewpoint. And I think, yeah, I like the point of going back to the roots. And just on that point, my next question is to Ms. Preeti. So, Preeti, I think taking cues from all the speakers so far, like one thing that I would love for you to elaborate on is like, how do we move from consumers, and this consumer, the term is all inclusive right now over here, how do we move from their understanding of recycling, I mean they agreeing to okay, yes, sustainability is required, to reaching a point where they are actively forming it into a fundamental habit. So you have been a part of so many creative campaigns before, and from Toxic Link itself. So have you seen? Could you share some insights or some projects you may have come across which can be implemented? And how do we ensure that consumers start participating and giving their waste?
Thanks, Shreya. And it has been a wonderful association. Really nice to hear the initial session as well, and understand perspective from players from other areas as well. Can you
Just to
hear?
interrupt, your voice is very low. If you can just be near to the mic and be a bit loud, that would be helpful.
Is that any better?
Yeah, a lot better.
So yeah, thank you for inviting me for this session. And as far as I understand, Shreya, the basic variables when we talk about consumer behaviors is attitude, motivation, knowledge, and behavior. All of them are very, very important when we are trying to empower consumer to participate in any sort of environmental, kind of change that we are looking for. And if you look at basic, trying to understand and influence anything environmentally related social behavior, we have to look at the new norm of social marketing approach. And social marketing is about promoting socially desirable behavior, but it's about also firstly understanding the individual, their circumstances, knowledge, attitudes, and behavior intentions. So it's something where we kind of don't design service from a service provider's angle, but also kind of look at what the user wants or what the consumer wants. Whereas right now, like Professor was mentioning earlier as well, that there is a top-down approach where you are a service provider or a brand. When we talk about electronics, they are designing it to suit their purpose and not really suit the purpose of the consumer. There is a kind of isolation which also kind of results, I would say, in kind of an intention action gap. So there is obviously an intention action gap when we're looking at e-waste. There is kind of growing awareness. Obviously, it's still like many people said, it's kind of a I would say still very very small. So you're looking at awareness of maybe couple of percentages, kind of only maybe 1%, 2% of the population which is really aware of what is, e-waste and what is required to be done. But even with the current awareness, there is obviously an intention action plan. And in that, I would say, harnessing the power of social influence is one of the most effective ways. If you want to get any pro-environmental behavior in consumption as well as disposal, I think that is, kind of very, very important. And, I feel that there has to be a total shift when we are looking at in terms of not having an economy which is so forced on, kind of ownership behavior. I think there has to be a lot more which is done to move to an experience behavior. So how do we sell products? How do we market products? It's also got to shift that we start not selling ownerships, but start selling experiences, favor experience over ownership. So I think that's something which is very very important. And also, I feel this whole this I think Professor Mitra also touched upon is especially, I mean, I won't say this is very specific to ways, but when we look at environment behavior, the whole idea about desire to fit in or conform to the behavior of a lot of people around you, I think that has to be harvested in a certain way. At this point, um, that is hardly upfront. I remember, and I think Pranshu would agree with me that when the earlier Avatar, Nokia did this whole campaign of planet. There was a Nokia campaign for recycling, where there was I think Shah Rukh Khan who was the face of that campaign. I think that's one probably campaign. There was a face to it. There was some sort of a kind of the aspirational value assigned to it, and that's the reason why that campaign probably remains something which people remember, or people kind of at least made them aspire to do something, whether it was students or older people. So I think there has to be some sort of a, kind of appealing to the heart more than the mind all the time. I think in a lot of these cases, we have to take a posture whether, want to appeal to the heart or the mind. And many a times, that decision becomes crucial in how do you change behavior. So I think those are my initial bit that yes, I don't see too many like Shripriya, you asked me whether there are any models where you can talk about how the change is happening, or if they're successful models which probably can get integrated in the whole e-waste consumer behavior. I'm not too sure there are any ready-made models as such. And also when we talk about international consumers and kind of our consumer at local level in Indian context, the behavior is obviously very, very different, and one needs to understand that before designing any program. I feel most producers, what they've done is, kind of taken a program and just put it, not understanding consumer behavior. I think that's something which I would say is a base of where to start from.
Thank you so much, Preeti. I think, yeah, you did put in some apt points out there. And now, if I just pick it up from one is we look at from individual consumer perspective, but now if we just look at a holistic, from an organization perspective, comes bulk consumers and like bigger. It's just like a family of consumers put together. Then, in that case, just my next question would go on to Miss Nalini. Ma'am, are you there? Can you? Is Miss Nalini there? Okay. Ma'am, can you hear us? We are unable to see you.
Yeah, I think she has dropped out. We'll reach out.
Okay, okay.
We will arrange a
No
call.
problem. Sure, sure, no problem. So, Pranchu, thanks for speaking up. So, so that all our attendees are aware, could you share some insights on the campaign that Preeti just mentioned about Nokia?
This is a very old campaign. This was the very first campaign in India at a level. I think no other campaign has reached that level that it was done. So, but it had deep pockets. I mean, let me also put that very clearly. So, it was the first campaign that India evidenced in terms of. It was called Planet Ke Rakhwale, and it was long before the e-waste regulations came into being. So, in 2008. Nokia started rethinking, because it was the market leader. It also very clearly meant for us as an organization, and I'm saying us because I used to lead Nokia as micro sustainability department at that time. The whole idea was, thought leadership has so many different hats. It is not just about sales. It's not just about quality of products, but it is also creating patterns which are sustainable. And with that objective, Shah Rukh Khan used to be our brand ambassador. We engaged him and did a whole 360 marketing campaign. It was TV commercials, a regular full 360 marketing campaign. You have print media, you have TV commercials, you have billboard marketing. So it was all combined, and that became the main marketing campaign of Nokia as a company. So it was not a sustainability campaign. We managed to make it the main theme campaign of company as a brand. And even within the organization, it was judged as the best campaign globally of Nokia ever. So it had a huge implication, and I think it was a very good. It also gave a very positive momentum to at a country level that collection can be done if the willingness is there. We didn't have huge volumes, which were collected, but what it did was it shifted the dialogue in certain ways. So over to you.
If I can just add, Shripriya and Prancho, but then that campaign, as you said, this came much before the rules came in. And, at that point, I think we were starting from almost zero. It was zero ground. And this campaign obviously helped it to take it to a certain level. And, there was probably a need to carry on that momentum, which obviously, did not because of whatever Nokia shut down and things like that. But the fact that that kind of a momentum has not been created since then, which could, kind of have a much longer impact because there was obviously a break and that was starting. So I think that's something, that kind of a campaign can really, take it to a different level. And at this juncture, especially when we are, have moved really years ahead and, in terms of both awareness, in terms of maturity of the whole industry, I think a campaign like that can really, kind of obviously, as Pranchu says, it had deep pockets. So obviously, it's not always possible, for A company or B company. And that also brings me to your, earlier thing about level playing field. That if the brands could come together and create something of this sort together, I mean, I think that will have a massive impact.
Indeed. So, okay. So I'll just continue. So one is on that having campaigns which can afford to reach out to much greater audience globally, and another is also to reach out to individuals on एकदम क्या कहते हैं उसको to reach out to individuals as if like I'm just talking to a friend. So one is the massive scale of creating awareness, and another, I think, Mr. Sumant, your organization has been excelling at reaching out to people at a very close contact, right? And you have done such fabulous campaigns with Nukkad Nataks, with your signature campaigns, जहाँ पे आप एकदम पास जाके उनको बताते हैं भाई यार आ जाओ, start participating. So I mean, I'm really curious to know, like, how do you see, how do you measure the impact of that निजी बातें जब आप कहते हो उनसे कि अब आ जाओ आपका waste दे दो. So how do you see and how do you measure? Like, does it really seep into the minds of the audience who participate? And could you share some examples of some transformations that people have had through your campaigns?
Yeah, first of all, Jai Sri Krishna to all of you. And Uh, I am very thankful to the Karo Sambhav team and all the organizing team who has invited me for this wonderful topic, the need of the hour, basically, you can say. And uh, after listening some very good speaker like Professor Mitra, Mr. Pransu, Honorable Chairman of Punjab Pollution Control Board, and Miss Preeti from Toxic Link, very few things are remaining to speak now. But I would love to speak my experiences. I would like to share my experiences with all of you. What our organization doing, what I am doing on the ground level, basically. And a very well-known proverb, I believe in that proverb, basically, foundation is strong, building is bound to be strong. And I really believe in this proverb. So, first of all, I would like to convey one thing like circular economy or plastic waste management, or you can say the recycling, reduce, R3 concepts. These words are coined by the intellectual ones like circular economy. It's only known to the some environmental activists or those are involved in such activity, not for the all the stakeholders like all the users, because we know the India is the country of agriculturists, and in everybody knows that agriculturists are very much concerned about their crop and their day-to-day activities. They are not very much concerned about the environment. But nowadays, uh, our respected Prime Minister has given a new vertical to the country, like linear economy to circular economy. Now, people are understanding about these coins words basically. But what I found during our like organization groundwork with so many organizations like PACE, Karo Sambhav, we have privilege to work with Karo Sambhav in two projects, with one GIZ Varanasi and individual in the Maharashtra, some cantonment areas. So what I personally, I and my team observed, we must connect to the ground realities, to the maximum stakeholders. We have to design some IC activities as per their requirement, as per their understanding. We don't need to say at the every place is the circular economy and the circular economy, because the layman doesn't understand about the circular economy. What is circular economy? Obviously, when we start the awareness activities in the different parts of the country, we are privileged to work in all parts of the country, in the northern parts, southern parts, northeast also. We just finished one extended awareness activities Manipur with the support of PACE, and Goa also in this new year event. So, and what we observed, every stakeholder has to be understand this circular economy, reduce, reuse, recycle in a different way. Like only talking to them, please dispose it properly, don't litter the things and all the things is not sufficient. We need to demonstrate with all the product made from these waste materials. If you will dispose of properly, if you will collect the waste at source, then what will be benefited to you also and for the country also, right? I'm just giving an example. Two projects we are doing with Blue Planet. It's a corporate, and one Tata Motors in Lucknow. So we are just engaged the students, kids, school going kids, because what Professor Mitra has also told, keep if the kid will speak to their parents, then they will understand, and they'll definitely do the things what their kids wants to like convey the things. Please do not do ye bhi aap mat karo. Don't litter the plastic, don't litter any type of waste, because nothing is waste unless we will segregate or we litter the things, because the only issue is littering any type of product. If you have ample amount of any biodegradable waste, biodegradable products, we'll throw the things in as our habit. So we need to change our behavior change. So I'm just giving an example of one project that we are doing in Delhi with the government schools and Tata Motors, with the help of Tata Motors CSR project in Lucknow. So we just encourage the students to bring, first collect their waste at their home, all type of dry waste, especially dry waste. Maximum dry waste comprises of plastics, either PET bottles or multi-layer plastics, single-use plastics, because only ban is not the solution. Ban is only happens due to the our behaviors mentality, like littering mentality, or you can say it's due to the only emotional issues. So we what we are doing in those projects, like we just convey the students to please don't litter the waste, segregate and collect at your home, and this and submit in schools, and every waste will have some points. If he will deposit the PET bottle in school, he will have around 10 points, 15 points, like that. Every waste is having the points, and after accumulating the number of points, like 2000, 3 points, he will be treated as a planet warrior or anything else. And that recognition obviously will that encourage them. And after like collecting all type of waste, what we are doing, we are just we have connected with so many recyclers, plastic recyclers, e-waste recyclers. So what we are doing, we just make the products from their collected waste. Then they will realize that this is made by us only, this the contribution is ours. So they will encourage. And the other things, we have done so many signature drive, signature campaigning and all the things in so many areas. Please come and please take the place, so you don't litter the waste. You will segregate the waste, and encourage the 100% recycling, because every plastic is recycling, or every waste is recycling, if it will dispose properly. So and yes,
Sumanji, I'll
please.
have to cut you short a little so that we'll have more
Yeah,
questions.
sure,
But yeah,
sure.
I mean, if you had some closing remark, please do share it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'll cut it, finish in a short. I really feel bad when someone is crossing to Gurgaon and says after uh, uh, crossing the Gurgaon is looking like a Singapore. It's really, I feel very bad. Why we are comparing to the other country, and why not in India? So we must concentrate on source segregation, and you can say recycling, circular economy. We must aware to the more community person, uh, capacity building programs to the sanitation worker and all the things. So it will be happen, and now everyone is uh, making it responsible to one extent. I hope we'll get the things very soon, and we'll get our country very clean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sumanji. So the next question would I would like to ask you, Dr. Adarsh. So one is एक तो होगी बात. So even Mr. Daman Sood from our audience member has also put in this question. One is तो we have aware citizens, we have consumers जो करना चाहते हैं कुछ, पर दूसरी बात ये है कि उन तक बात पहुंचती नहीं है कि अब वो किया कैसे जाए, like how do they participate. So for example, having the knowledge, while there may be collection centers, so just to add to Mr. Daman Sood is we do have collection centers in Delhi. We'll share it post the webinar. So now just coming back to the discussion, so ek to there may be centers, there may be provisions for consumers to participate, be it individual consumers, be it bulk consumers, but what tools probably can the state pollution control boards enable, or the regulatory authorities enable, जिससे कि all the actors are able to come together, and there is an ease of participation. तो अगर आप इस पे
This is I think this is the most difficult thing which you are asking. This is the problem. And as I again telling you that we have changed the whole concept of our ideology. We have went into the wrong principles. The one wrong principle is waste. Nothing is waste. Everything is resource. And it should be at the home, right at the office, right at the place. Segregation is a wrong principle. पहले 2 डब्बे आए, पहले 1 डब्बा आया, भी वेस्ट बिन होना चाहिए, फिर आए नहीं जी एक रेड एक ब्लू होना चाहिए, अब 10 डस्टबिन आ गए हैं. इट विल नॉट सर्वाइव, ये नहीं हो सकता यहाँ पे. Why we are, we are creating a problem, and just see 50 years back of each and every house, each and every office, everything was reused, recycled right at the origin. This was our thought. This we were never into use and throw. This is the difference of culture. After 50 years of wrong culture, and you feel that in one go or few years they will change, it is very difficult. That's the problem.
So then, if you could share,
And
what would be
there
some
are,
solutions?
do you see how many amount of there are departments? Board is a regulatory, NGT is a regulatory. There are, and the number of laws in India are more than any country's law related to environment. Thousands, maybe thousands of laws. 1000 लॉ होंगे. तो फॉलो किसने करना है? बिकॉज फॉलो करने के बाद, एंड एनजीटीज यू हैव जस्ट सीन एवरी टाइम after getting no response, they have to put a fine. 35,000 fine on two things only, two things of environment: solid waste management and sewerage management. 35,000 to West Bengal, 25,000 to Rajasthan, and I think Maharashtra maybe 30,000, Punjab 2,000, only for two things. So I don't say technology is bad. Technologies of waste management or technical things, making a sanitary landfill and everything is good. But this I think was happening only in those countries where they were earlier having a kind of use and throw culture, and they were managing their systems with the technological intervention. They were having money, they were having all resources, they were having those kind of habits of use and throw. But our habits were again, I just want to say that instead of making such campaigns, we should make a campaign that no humans, no office, no home, no government system should generate any kind of waste. MRF facility, thousands of MRF facilities are there. Thousands. And you will see data, thousands of sewage treatment plants are there. First thing is establishment, then working. Working means money. Nobody is ready to put the money. And nobody wants to go in the right way. So technologies are not bad. So again, everything then comes down the behavior. So as the first speaker professor was telling, so then now there is a kind of reverse teaching, that because now the children have learned something of environment in their schools. So they are relatively little better. So then they are teaching the older ones, but older ones, they don't want to change. So no doubt we have to find a way out of all these things. But my issue is that, as the earlier speaker was telling, that it is that we move in the cities and we compare with the foreign. We should compare with our Indian system, which was earlier in place. So वहां पे जाके वहां, so thought process should be at that kind of things. Otherwise, it will be not easy to kind of remove this kind of thing. So thank you.
Professor, there is a question addressed to you actually. So on your point, when you mentioned that to move away from binless, so the audience wants to know what are some solutions that can be provided, and if you could just share something that is that some initiatives you're taking in Punjab.
It should be biological based. If you want to throw your waste, or if you want to still generate waste, everything should be managed biologically through microorganism, through earthworms, through vermicomposting, and that too at very small levels. Not at first you will collect them, then you will take to very different place, and a whole city of 10 lakh population can manage one waste. No, very small. So that's why again it comes to that home composting in these colonies or residence or gardens. Now instead of doing this thing, we are putting waste from the garden. There should not be any waste in the garden. It should make compost at that kind of thing. And rather, one more point is that you are burning your waste. That is more dangerous than anything else. And NGT has put a fine of 5,000 per burning, but nobody is collecting. Nobody's means, and that has been put a fine of 5 or 10 years back. 5-10 साल पहले फाइन बन चुका है. कितनों के साथ लड़ोगे, कितनों के साथ उनको ये हर बार कानून के साथ करोगे. और कौन से जो लोकल गवर्नमेंट के जो कॉर्पोरेशन के वर्कर है वही जला देते हैं, क्योंकि जो पहले जहां पे वो फेंकते थे वो पहाड़ बन चुका है. फिर उसमें ये जो आपने नया प्लास्टिक आ गया, थर्मोकोल, अब तो शुक्र है दिस बैन इज वेरी एक्यूरेट एंड गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग इन द राइट डायरेक्शन नाउ, because banning in a phase manner will slowly change the things. And you think that you were living without plastic very wonderfully. हम ये कहते हैं नहीं रह नहीं सकते प्लास्टिक के बिना, थर्मोकोल, क्यों नहीं रह सकते? you were there, all alternatives were there. And rather they will manage your organic waste, जो पत्ते थे, जो कागज था, उसको तो जितना मर्जी रीयूज करो, रिसाइकल. तो ये कुछ फंडामेंटल जो प्रॉब्लम्स है ना, उनको समझना पड़ेगा. मतलब अदरवाइज इंडिया में, मैं स्पेशली ये बात जो कह रहा हूँ, दिस इज वेरी स्पेसिफिक टू माय कंट्री. आई एम नॉट टेलिंग दैट द technologies in the Japan or in China, they may be putting those things in place, but here we can't. We can only change our behavior, and then again who will change? ये एक बड़ा क्वेश्चन है. I say I will change. I will not advise anybody. मैं किसी को एडवाइस नहीं कर रहा यहाँ पे. I am just sharing my thoughts. I should not generate any waste. This is my responsibility.
Got it.
जो हमारा कथनी और करनी में फर्क है ना, तो यहाँ यही हो रहा है. अभी हम सब, मैं बोर्ड में बैठा हूँ. First thing I have done in my board, that self-regulation. If board is regulating solid waste, board is regulating water, board is doing all the compliances within the system, then it has right to say to the others. And this is the part of our, इसमें education वाला भी part है. जो हमारा education था, this was, everything was in education, in our education. Now the education has become a kind of not character building, a kind of commercial placements and all that kind of thing. So अपने को बदलो, अपने को सुधारो, तो मुझे लगता है वातावरण सुधर जाएगा. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think certain points are definitely can be taken, but when it comes to unconventional waste streams, so certain of these principles cannot be really applied. So, Preeti, one last question. So let me elaborate on that. So one question to you, Preeti, is when we talk about e-waste, when we talk about say non-biodegradable waste, right? You have done certain surveys with people, while you have made some nice videos around the complexities that e-waste carries with itself. Could you share with us, like, what are some of the most convenient means that a consumer, be it an individual or a bulk consumer, would want to have, so that there is an ease of participation? If you could just share some thoughts on that.
I think, as I said, there's no, kind of one rule, kind of doesn't apply to everyone. And there have to be systems which are, kind of designed according to, kind of diversity within the country as well. So, yes, obviously there have been some, cases where you see that ease and, ease of collection, or, the reach of the knowledge has resulted in change. But then those changes have been, I would say, temporary. And that permanent change has been always very, very influenced by the monetary gain, which Kancho initially itself also mentioned, that, in the long term, it's that, the reward in terms of the financial reward is what has been the trigger for most consumers in terms of their behavior. And the whole bit is, how do you change that? So there are obviously two ways of trying to change that. One is obviously give them that financial, kind of incentive that they're looking for, which, I'm sure Pranshu will not agree. We have had a lot of discussion regarding that, and I think that in some way I agree that, you kind of, I think paying for, I wouldn't say bad behavior, but in terms of kind of encouraging in some way a behavior which is not really apt for environment, because then the action is not taken because of the environmental reasons. The other bit is obviously about how do you, kind of change, bring in more ease, bring in more information for consumer to change. And I think those are, and that's why I said about, do we, change the entire setup in terms of making it more an experience rather than ownership? Because I think here, when people ask for that financial, reward, it's because they think that there's an ownership of that product that they have. How do we change that concept? It's a long drawn process because it's not going to change. This is, something which has been inculcated for centuries that you need to own, you need to own. Um, but again, taking from Professor Mitra and other speakers that they, kind of spoke about it, that, if we start young and, start addressing people and already getting into with the school children, because right now what we're talking about, you should recycle, you should, kind of buy sustainable products. That's what we are talking about. We still have not made that shift about, kind of from ownership to leasing or ownership to experience economy. We've not made the shift about saying that, let's not just recycle, but minimize it. So I think those conversations are almost untouched. I saw a question on the chat as well. But how do we, kind of change the behavior towards that? It is going to be long drawn, but again, as I said, that if we start with people who are younger, who are who haven't really formed the habit in terms of their mindsets, then that change would be much faster. Also, clearly, kind of showing them the rewards or showing them, not the financial reward but other rewards. I think how do we quantify those rewards, or how do we put them in real numbers and show it to them? I think that's where the big bad is. And I think again I'll take some pointers from the chat as well, that at this point consumer is not really aware of what happens to the product once it is cut. So there's this whole lack of transparency, lack of kind of accountability through the value chain. I think that's something which is never addressed. So, the producers or the stakeholders can complain that nobody wants to participate in the system, but why should I participate in a system where I don't know what is happening with it? My role, you want me to end my role when I just give it to you and that's it. But that cannot be when you're asking me to do something which is out of my habit or out of my, mindset. So, somebody also has to take that one step ahead when I want to take a step ahead as a consumer or a bulk consumer. So I think that hasn't really happened. And I think as an industry, I think they have to take the first step before consumer taking that step. So I think, yes, both go hand in hand, but I think there has to be some bit of, more accountability from the industry in this case. And I think the consumer will come in line, because I think people are realizing the impact of environmental damage. Sustainability is also becoming fashionable. I think that's also credit to a lot of social media, that sustainability has been made a little fashionable. And I think some of these points have to be, cashed in when we talk about e-waste.
Uh, yeah. Thanks, Preeti. I think you did summarize quite a lot of points spoken so far. So now I would, so just to inform all of you all, Miss Nalini from Tamil Nadu State Pollution Control Board had to go for another meeting, and that's why she is not on this panel. So, so sorry about that. And now I'd like to invite all the speakers, please come on board. We would take some Q&A from the chat. And I would also invite Professor Mitra if he can also join the discussion. And you all can feel free to take any question from the chat. But I think Preeti, just to continue on the topics that you shared, one question is, somebody is asking, like, why does the consumer need to know the result of the product that they have given for recycling once they've used it till end of life? I mean, it's a, not to elaborate on that, but just a fair thought that, okay, this is also a perspective that we are getting from consumers. So feel free to take
interesting perspective, but still we are working on a model where there is an ownership model and not really a experience model. I think the consumer, when you want consumer to participate in the system, I think there should be a full accountability, full transparency that a consumer should be able to see, and that helps in evolving a whole ecosystem. I think that's very essential. And it's not just about consumer able to see everything. I think every stakeholder being able to see what's happening in the system. I think that's very important for overall growth of an ecosystem.
Thank you. There's one question I'd like any of you all to pick up. One is bringing in carbon tax or plastic tax that can address sustainable consumption. Is that a far-fetched solution? Who would like to take it?
I can. So I think this has been debated not just in India, but at a global level. We are seeing various type of, this is a policy tool, and this is amongst the whole set of policy tools, uh, uh, in some way, EPR falls under this category where, in some way, there is uh, an obligation for producers to now pay for the products that have been put on the market and ensure that at the end of their life they are collected and recycled. Now, is it implemented in the best way? Yes, there are possibilities to improve. Can it be done? Can a carbon tax, plastic tax be applied? There are countries where this is being tried, but again, there is no clear direction that this is the best possible way. So again, it's one of the policy tools. Generally works in countries where the population size is much smaller and where there is very clear possibility to invest the money collected from these tools into very clear systems, because there is a lot of transparency if you are collecting such tax. Let's take example of Swachh Bharat cess. We do have similar cess systems in India, but honestly speaking, today which all programs that cess fund, at least at an individual level, I'm not aware. There hopefully are mechanisms, where it feeds into, but such systems, require very deep level of transparency, very clear knowledge, so that people happily participate. Otherwise, you have a great amount of money which is collected at one end, but no clear utilization or the impact coming from those funds.
Anyone wants to add to it, feel free to. Yeah, it's an open conversation now.
Let me also take one more question coming from, which is around, can government play a role in active distribution of segregation solutions beyond consumer education? I think again, it has been tried in rural parts of India. There are many cities, many territories where government has very actively engaged in enabling, whether it is vermicomposting or providing biodigesters, small scale. But they are more for, I would say, not very urban life. We don't see these sort of schemes running in urban India. We are seeing most of these schemes running in rural parts of the country, where especially for agrarian economy, if the whole city is more in agrarian sector, then government is encouraging these sort of solutions. But the moment we see complex products, and I'd like to build on what Professor Vig mentioned, that while this is very desirable, but as products are getting more and more complex, we are talking of too many composites, too many compounds in a single product. Bio-based systems don't actually, then work. And you need to look at very different sort of recycling technologies. And in many cases, we don't even have those solutions yet for various types of composites that are being put on the market. E-waste is a very good example of such products where you can recycle a part of the fraction, maybe 65%, 70%, but for the holistic product, there is really no solution out there.
Fair point. There's one more question I'd like to put it to the panel. Is somebody's asked, how can customer have trust in recyclers or the collection agent that their IT goods are in safe hands? And what if it gets misused?
I think bringing back again that same bit, that I think improving the transparency in the whole system. So I think it's very, very essential. There has to be a personal closure for everybody who is part of the system. And when you say that I should give the paste and forget about it because I've used it to end of life, there's no personal closure because I feel, I've given it, but I don't know what's happening to that. So I think a personal closure is very, very important. And for that, that's whole transparency of that system where I know actually what is a recycler doing both as a bulk consumer as an individual consumer. I think it's very important. It shouldn't be a dialogue between the government and the recycler only. It is something where you want my participation. It has to be on an equal term where I know what is happening in the system. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and if I were to add to what Preeti said, I think we are starting to reach there. This dialogue has started in forms of product passport, that for each and every product there is a unique number, which allows traceability. The thing is, how do you fund such complex systems, and do you have enough money? I mean, one of our previous episodes actually talked very strongly on the costs of going circular, and we discussed this point at large earlier that while one can design complex systems, you need funding for all of it to work. And how do we provision that sort of funding? But we are starting to see signs of product passports, coming to life in Europe. This will, I believe, at some point in time, not very far from now, enter India, where you can trace back individual product to recycling. Today, while it can be done, but the costs are so humongous for such sort of collection systems that it becomes it's not a matter of can it be done, it's a matter of do we want to do it, do we have finance enough for doing it.
Thank you. And as we,
Query which I
yeah,
see on the
please do.
rules where somebody is asked about whether the new ES rules, what impact it has on consumer and does it address existing gaps in awareness and action. I would I mean, obviously the new rules which will come into effect later this year has certain components which I would like to at this point believe that will actually go against the whole system of trying to address consumer, especially when we talk about individual consumer. Whether the rule does anything on kind of reducing the gaps in awareness, I don't think so, and I think that's a big lacuna which is there in the rules. Now, whether any of the guidelines which are issued around it would address some of those, and how does that, kind of address that will be very, very crucial. But at this point, yes, I do feel that individual consumers have been, kind of left out in the coming framework. But let's see how, things pan out in the next few months.
Thank you. And now this would be the last question, which we have received it from one of our site team members. So just yesterday, Kalki Kekla, the Bollywood actress, she gave away her e-waste to our Goa team members during the mobile van collection drives. And suddenly we did see a spur in the conversation just because there was a celebrity involved in creating that change, right? So, and Professor Mitra did mention about trend setting, certain short-term activities. So the question that we received is, should we take the opportunity of such an activity that when they are participating, is it a sustainable model to really go ahead and create a trend, or should we look? How should we look at setting a trend so that sustainability is like just now become a habit? Can trend setting be taken to create a habit? So open to all.
Can I respond?
Please.
Okay, so the thing about these kind of things is that it creates a temporary hype, but it also dies out fast, and that's true. So here are two thoughts that can still uh, have a bigger or longer term impact. One is identify certain, like today we have a lot of these, this day of the year, this whatever. So that at least it becomes an annual event rather than a one-off. That's one. And like we have Earth Hour, we have whatever. And then we build around a lot of interesting, fun, easy to demonstrate, and ideally easy to measure kind of activity where I can say, I did this and this is what happened, or whatever, right? So, and then easy to share on social media. And if you have not one, but a series of activities, like let's say once every couple of months, then, you're keeping the broad topic top of mind, because aaj ye hua, 2 mahine baad aur kuch hua, like and it happens every year. So that's one way. the other thing, which is a bit of a wild idea, I was just thinking while I was here the conversation. In a lot of cases, we've actually leaned back on technology to solve some of the problems. Like, and India has this so-called digital stack. So I'm hearing about EPR. So it's almost like saying, each of us has today a credit rating. Now imagine if you had each individual based on whatever you buy, whatever you consume. And today, most things when you buy, when you consume, there's a traceability not just of the product but also of the consumer. If you collect points and then those points can be, you can reduce the points by doing certain good things like returning a product or recycling or whatever. So everyone gets a equivalent of credit point, and if you have good like a positive credit point versus negative credit point, then you can show off whatever. So I'm saying we have to create uh, a new lingo that people can use in social media, saying these are my green points versus these are my red points, let's say. And how do we connect it to almost every activity that you do, everything that I buy, everything that I use or consume? Can it be at one level traceable back to the producer, at another level also traced back to the consumer? Where I know I can go on like today, it's very easy for me to go on multiple, Crystal or whatever site, and I know what my credit rating is. So, I mean, I don't, it sounds a little like big thing, but typically what happens is that to put it together initially is a big thing. It's a capital intensive project, but to run it and once scale happens, it actually becomes relatively cost effective. And when enough people start participating, that is when it starts paying for itself. And of course, you can get the companies to pay part for it. Government can initially kickstart. I mean, a lot of and this is a public good. So maybe a government can initially kickstart with an investment to create a digital stack of whatever, consumer green points or whatever, and then slowly populate it, whatever. We've seen that a lot of things. Like today, everybody has to, financially, we have to connect everything we do with our Aadhaar and PAN and whatever, and it gets traced and tracked. So how about connecting it back with our consumption behavior? I mean, that's a big idea, and I'm sure there will be many stumbling blocks, but if you think through, I'm sure it's possible. It might take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but maybe that's something. And there are certain things that in India, we've actually gone far ahead of the world, especially in terms of digital stack or solutions that for public good, right? Think of COVID, think of whatever. So I think maybe it's a time to imagine something and not necessarily copy the West. I like what I was hearing about going back to, but the truth is, things like e-waste or whatever, we can't exactly go back to India of 18th or 19th century. That is also not possible. But can we use technology to jump to the 24th century and do something where technology actually helps us to, change behavior? That's like a very broad thought that I have.
Yeah, Professor Mitra, thank you for bringing this point in, and let me just share with you. So India, there is an organization called Societal Platform, which exists. This is by the group of people who created the Aadhaar scheme in India. And Karusambhav is a member of Societal Platform, and we are today looking at technology stack for circular economy. In terms of creating national inventories of secondary raw materials and a whole range of things. So maybe we can, consider this as inviting some of the people from Societal Platform and do a specific session on how do we create a digital stack to drive circular economy at scale. Because at least in that dialogue, it is gaining a lot of momentum, and there are a lot of solutions which are possible. And because we are already far ahead in the digitization space, and we have a lot of data sets which can then be utilized to make it all happen. So thank you for bringing this point. So with this, I think we are reaching almost at the end of our session. Let me take just one more question, which majority have been addressed. So someone has asked, is it possible to fix the price for e-waste? The answer is definitely yes. And why do I say it, very emphatically? When we talk of scrap value or when we talk of end of life of any product, it is not really the functioning of that product. So, the value of a product gets assigned when you look at the functional delivery of a product or its components. At the end of life, you're essentially looking at the material value. So we are no more looking at what, is it a 3G compatible phone or is it a 2G compatible? The only thing we are looking is what is it that has gone in the bill of material? What's the bill of materials of this particular product? What has gone into making? Because when you recycle, you have to extract the amount of iron, steel, copper, platinum, whatever, has gone into making of this product. So there are ranges which are kind of defined at a global level. That a phone consists of X percentage, Y percentage, Z percentage of these materials, and basis this, a range can be fixed. Have we fixed that range for India? The answer is definitely no. This is something which has been debated. I would personally love for these ranges to come and exist so that people know that if someone is giving very high price, then something is off. Maybe someone is trying to extract data, maybe someone is trying to do something else, which is not recycling. In the market of India today, we see, waste being auctioned generally at 3 to 4 times the value at which, material, 3 to 4 times the material value of the product. So, which, at times, not at times, I think we have been consistently questioning that something is off here. Someone is paying a lot more for the waste while still issuing a recycling certificate. So they are definitely not recycling, doing something else, because the material value is seriously lower than what the price is being paid for. So with this, I think we'd like to really thank all the speakers, all the people who participated. Professor Mitra, a deep thank you to you. Preeti, thank you for again, being a part. Toxics Link has been a consistent supporter of these webinars. They have been very, very active. So really thank you once again for coming today. Sumant, really love to hear you, and a lot more power to you to drive this grassroots action at a grassroots level. So uh, uh, Nalini could not participate. She did come on the call for a few minutes, but some emergency again today broke out. Today we are being hit by emergencies, so she had to leave right when she joined. And thank you, Professor Dr. Vig, for being there, for setting the tone in certain direction. Uh, with this, I'll also like to thank all the audience. We will share again the recordings, the details of this on our social media. You are also very welcome, very welcome to look at the previous episodes, which have gone into different aspects of circular economy and how do we enable it from a emerging market perspective. But what I find is that a lot of dialogue that has been done in the past does not necessarily only cover emerging markets. They have implications globally. So you're very welcome to see them, and we will reach out to all of you for the next webinar. We will share the details, which is planned sometime in February and then in March. So with that, thank you to all of you. I'll also like to thank our sponsors, Apple, Dell, and HP Enterprise, for enabling these sessions, and to our partners, WEEE Forum and GIZ. Thank you again to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Request all the attendees to please leave the meeting. Otherwise, the meeting would be still on in case you are on this. Yeah.